welcome to The Explainer. So today we are diving headfirst into a genuine mystery. I mean it. Instead of your usual paragraphs of text or, crystal clear data, what we're looking at today is a single file. It's simply titled Cheng Pu. And it's basically a collection of visual echoes in these really highly compressed digital fragments. It's wild. So let's engage our imaginations, all right? Let's see exactly what we can decode together.
For this one, I actually want you to act as a kind of digital archaeologist with me today. Because when we ask what secrets do these fragments hold, we're really looking at how our own brains desperately try to find meaning in pure, unfiltered ambiguity. In a world absolutely full of explicit, in-your-face information, it's actually incredibly fun to just slow down and decode a mystery completely from scratch. Let's look at 3 distinct artifacts and see exactly how your brain fills in the blanks.
Okay, let's dive into this. Artifact 1. We'll call this our compressed grouping. Right off the bat, you'll notice these extremely faint, kind of washed-out whitish shapes against this really stark background. The composition here is super vertical, clustered really tightly together to create this intense sense of density. Notice how there are literally no sharp edges? Everything is soft. It's blurred. It's almost as if severe digital compression has taken whatever the original object was and just reduced it down to its essential structural shadows.
Which, of course, brings us to a really critical crossroads. What exactly are we looking at here? Your brain is probably already naturally engaging in pattern recognition, right? So are these vertical, blocky forms the washed-out satellite footprints of some ancient walls? Or, hey, given the document's title, Cheng Pu, could they actually be heavily obscured typographic characters, magnified so much that they just become abstract art? That ambiguity, it isn't a mistake. It's the whole experience. It forces us to entirely rethink what even constitutes data in the first place.
Now let's move to and see how this builds, because this visual rhythm shifts dramatically as we examine Artifact 2, this horizontal array. While that first artifact was this tight, vertical knot, this one, well, it spreads out. It's wider. There's way more negative space between these ghostly little shapes, and yet the overall visual language remains exactly the same. But that deliberate spacing, it really suggests an intentional order, Like a progression just marching right along from left to right.
And wow, this next part illustrates how a single piece of context absolutely changes everything. Nestled perfectly right between the visual fragments, we find our one and only typographic clue. It's a cross-sword symbol. Boom! Suddenly all that ambiguity is just broken. Even represented here in a really stylized way, this symbol carries the massive, heavy associative weight of conflict, strategy, or historical warfare. By dropping this universally recognized, concept right into the mix, a definitive thematic anchor is suddenly set. It's a real game changer.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens immediately after that martial clue. It's fascinating. Artifact 3 heavily shares the hazy horizontal composition of the second artifact. We are right back to that wide, spaced-out arrangement. But here is the crucial part. We are now viewing this entirely through the lens of those crossed swords. If the swords denote a clash, a battle, does this represent the aftermath? It's human nature. Our minds naturally want to stitch all this together into a clean narrative of before, during, and after.
The crucial point to grasp here is how these elements relate over time. Just look at the structural similarities between the second and third artifacts, side by side. They both share that distinct horizontal array and that fading visual effect, acting almost like 2 frames from a completely corrupted old film reel. Because that cross-sword symbol originally separated them, the visual structure itself dictates a timeline. It's a setup and a resolution, and it's implied purely through geometry. How cool is that?
Which brings us to our final question for today. Does that single sword symbol fundamentally recontextualize these silent shapes? Were we just staring at meaningless digital noise, or were we actually looking at the faded, blurred formations of troops from a battle long, long past? That's the absolute brilliance of the Cheng Pu document. It gives us just enough structure to spark our pattern recognition, but never ever enough detail to be 100% certain. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes understanding isn't about reading the text perfectly. It's about interpreting the blur. It's about navigating the negative space. Thanks for joining me on this one. It's been a blast.